Do you remember a time when you would go to the video rental place to borrow or reserve because there are only limited copies of popular titles, movies that you really wanted to watch? Do you remember a time when you would buy a film for your camera and then carefully ration out the 36 pictures that you could take with that one roll of film? Those days are gone. The market disruptions that led to these changes mean that those video rental places and the ubiquitous cameras with their rolls of film and their small black cylindrical containers are gone too. We stream the movies we want to watch, no waiting. We take numbers and numbers of pictures using the ever-present camera in our phones, no rationing. Disruption is an inconvenience to those stuck in the past. It's an opportunity to those always looking forward. And that's what we'll be talking about today. How to use disruption to build your brand into a hero. Hey everyone, it's Canon Wing from Inspiration to Millions. Disruption is this hugely transformational market force, and it helps drive the biggest, most significant changes of all. We all grew up with the story of the one hero, the lone inventor, the lone genius who changed the world. It wasn't really true then, and today we are embracing the value of community participation in game-changing events, inventions, social perspectives. Today, communities are the major determinant of change. When communities of people can do collectively drive change, that story of the individual hero being the savior and the driver of change is both limited and limiting. The one individual hero arriving on the scene of conflict or deprivation, then waving his metaphorical sword, boy, that was a poor sword wave, then waving his metaphorical sword to defeat the problem and help all those in need is now almost medieval. This whole concept of the brave hero fighting for good and becoming victorious in the face of great odds is a thing changing, a thing more akin to the ancient past. It's no longer a singular division of good and bad. The great and vital disruption that the internet caused in all of our lives has rendered the journey of the individual hero almost obsolete. We are now firmly in the age of community-driven change, thank goodness. So the ideal audience of your brand has to be the hero of your story, the driver of change. And today, we'll talk about how you can use this community-driven conversation, this disruptive technology, to your brand's advantage. Stephen Hawking says, we are all connected by the internet, like neurons in a giant brain. So nothing today is safe from the most profound changes, movies, literature, philosophy. It is a fact that we cannot become what we want to become by remaining what we are. So we used to be the story about the conflict and the hero who vanquishes all to emerge victorious. But when you look at this story from the modern lens, from today's eyes, it's too linear, too simplistic, too predictably old-fashioned. Also, with the way we have access to the new ways of telling stories, this manner of storytelling is much too limited. Look at the internet and the way that it connects each one of us to each other person on the planet. This has shaped our ability to tell new stories. It lets practically anyone tell a story, invites everyone to participate in the narrative while using different social media platforms, immersive technology, AI, and whatever comes next. While we are talking stories, think about the way we told stories too earlier. Ben-Hur, for instance, this older movie, was a moral, upstanding, strong character, almost unidimensional in his heroism. That was the 50s and 60s for you, peopled by fine, upstanding moral characters standing up to and defeating sheer evil. Cut to the modern phenomenon of Game of Thrones. Who would you say is the hero of the story? Is there anyone you would characterize as unequivocally good? Even the good have their frailties, suffer consequences of their one hubris. Don't some of the villains in the story sometimes elicit our sympathy? The drama series story itself has been like nothing else that went before. Where earlier we had conflict or the presence of evil, its resolution or removal, and then the end. But in Game of Thrones, we repeatedly see the good being vanquished. We see the evil triumph. The series has given birth to a whole new way of telling stories. Even kids' storytelling has altered in ways we couldn't have imagined previously. The handsome prince rescuing the beautiful damsel in distress, followed by both of them walking off into the sunset. It's pretty much gone. We have ugly, green, boogery-eating ogres telling us a beautiful story of love and Shrek. We have strong sisters working out their issues themselves in Frozen. And Despicable Me grew as far from evil villain. In Rapunzel, it's frequently the princess saving the prince rather than the other way around. Disruption is inevitable if you want to bring about change. Disruption is an inconvenience, but it's also an opportunity, your opportunity. These reflect changing social attitudes and correspond to the way that public thought has evolved in recent times. Witness the way the #MeToo movement has toppled the mighty, changed long-held perceptions, and driven social change. We are now all about communities bringing about systematic change rather than a lone crusader leading the charge. And so it is for our brands. You will never influence the world trying to be like it. It's arrogant to think that what you did yesterday will be sufficient for tomorrow. Brands don't just have to learn, they have to innovate based on that learning. This has to be the constant, ongoing, and unceasing process. The case study of Abercrombie Fitch has always been a lesson for me and others who study brands. The disruption here was about the brand not trying to appeal to everyone, not trying to be all good and positive and wholesome. It was a brand that was exclusive to the point of being exclusionary, even offending some in the process. Mike Jeffries took Abercrombie Fitch and turned the brand around by identifying a very specific niche for the brand back in 2006, when he admitted that, candidly, we go after the cool kids. He was pretty much saying that he was only interested in attracting a certain hip, cool, young, and attractive customer. He was clear that many people did not belong either in those clothes or in that brand. Perhaps it was sizeism, ageism, or plain old snobbery. At that time, with the internet far from what it is today, Jeffries got away with it. The brand controlled the narrative, and the statement was lost down the years. Until 2013, when Business Insider wrote about Abercrombie Fitch not making clothes for plus-size women, and quoted Jeffries from 2006. The difference? The internet community in 2013 was unforgiving. There was widespread criticism and condemnation from various quarters, but the brand loyalists were quite happy being in that exclusive club. Even while icons such as Ellen DeGeneres criticized the brand, the term "Fitch please" became quite popular at the time. The brand still gathered devoted brand loyalists. So this is where it gets really interesting. It wasn't just Mike Jeffries who took Abercrombie Fitch to the heights that the brand did. Despite his petty attitude, it was the people in the brand that helped to do this. There was and is this group of buyers happy to be thought of as thin, cool, attractive, popular, which is the narrative that they themselves had spun around the brand because of their own aspirations and belief about themselves. So when Business Insider published the article titled "Abercrombie Fitch Refuses to Make Clothes for Large Women," far from working to the detriment of the brand, it actually did the opposite. It was controversy, and it helped. It is a fact that managed narratives no longer work, as something like A&F's debacle turned success proves this point. The life of the brand can have an organic life beyond that which marketers and brand managers decide for it. The consumers want to be heard, and now they have the tools to be heard. A post goes viral on social media and triggers real change. A news story about a brand that is widely shared changes perceptions about that brand. It impacts sales. It helps create new products, drives innovation, and quite simply changes the brand perception. When you adopt technology, you find new ways to do old things. But when you internalize technology, you find new things to do. As I always say, branding is not a dictation, but a conversation. It can never be one way. It has to be a two-way communication. The brand has to tell its story, but equally, it has to listen. Harry Potter is relevant in the context of the wizard community. Luke Skywalker is one of the Jedi. Dorothy belongs in the magical world of Oz. A community gives a brand its relevance, its voice. No one does it alone. No one should do it alone. Now, Mike Jeffries saying what he did about Abercrombie Fitch is objectively a terrible thing to say. His words were undoubtedly objectionable, even offensive. But the takeaways are not. The message is that the brand doesn't have to please everyone, and not everyone belongs in your brand. You want your values and ethics to become known. You want your target market, your target consumer base to feel welcome, to know they belong in your brand. You don't have to do it like Mike Jeffries and tell people they aren't cool enough or the right size. That's petty and subjective and judgmental. It was something that could easily have backfired, and for a while it did. But you do want to get the message across to your ideal individual. This is where you belong. This is a safe and happy place for you. You have to create an environment that is safe for your brand and your audience to grow together. You have a place where they can grow their greater future, become the best version of themselves possible, because you will uphold the boundaries of what you believe is true. Being exclusive is a negative approach. Give it a positive spin. Protect your community instead. As a disruptor, you and your brand don't have to discover something new. You just have to discover a practical use for discoveries. Change is either going to happen to you or because of you. So here's what you can do today. Do a social media search for your brand name, the product keywords associated with your brand. Search on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Facebook to see what people are saying about it. Set yourself a Google alert for your brand name and selected keywords to see how often these terms are reported in the news and what context they're being mentioned in. Examine whether you are actually aware of what the community as a whole is saying about your brand, whether you're really listening to your own ideal individual. Also, check your own social media posts. What is the ideology you're seen as supporting? What is your brand attitude coming off like? Who's commenting and what are they saying? Remember not to be controversial unless, of course, it is your intent to create controversy, and then a story about it. Be careful though, this can backfire. In general, be respectful, cautious, and as neutral as you can. You have to manage social media presence with the utmost respect and caution. Make sure everyone at your company understands the values and ethics that drive your brand and that your brand stands for and what your brand will never stand for. Make sure you and your people act accordingly, personally and professionally, consistently. Make your values and ethics known via your name, tagline, logo, website, FAQs, everywhere. Steer the collective conversation in a positive direction. Thanks for joining me today. I'll leave you with this one last thought. Abercrombie Fitch didn't mind Ellen DeGeneres saying, "Fitch, please," in a disapproving tone, because their real audience was saying, "Yes, Fitch, please," in a far more approving tone. Get that collective conversation going. Set off that collective journey with your brand loyalists towards everyone's greater future. Create that safe place for your community to grow and thrive. And you too will become an inspiration to millions. And always, love what you do. Love how you do it. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to leave a comment below.